One of the greatest events of the summer season, the British Airshow attracts crowds second only to football. A wonderful opportunity to see a huge range of aircraft spanning more than a century of flight. The military contingent often provides some of the most spectacular displays. One of the most unusual jet fighter designs to make it from the drawing board to frontline operational squadrons was the BAE Systems Sea Harrier, a naval jump jet fighter, reconnaissance and attack aircraft. A later development of the Hawker Siddeley Harrier, the aircraft first entered service with the Royal Navy in April 1980 as the Sea Harrier FRS-1. The last version of this ship-borne combat aircraft was the Sea Harrier FA-2, which was introduced in 1988. Providing air defense for the carrier fleet, the Sea Harrier was informally known as the Shah. Able to take off and land in a space no bigger than itself, the Harrier has 4 exhaust nozzles to help it hover by vectoring the thrust from the engine. Sea Harriers took part in the Falklands War of 1982, flying from the aircraft carriers HMS Invincible and HMS Hermes. The Royal Navy Sea Harrier squadrons shot down 21 Argentine aircraft with no air-to-air losses. The Harrier was a groundbreaking masterpiece in aviation development. The next display is by what can only be described as 3 flying legends from the United States Air Force. Officially the Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk, this jet was dubbed the Stealth Fighter for its role in Operation Desert Storm in 1991. The F-117 is sometimes referred to as the Frisbee or the Wobblin' Goblin, supposedly because the aircraft was difficult to control. But to its elite pilots, the aircraft will always be the Black Jet. This is one aircraft nobody can miss at air displays because it's usually greeted by a chorus of car alarms. Rockwell International's B-1B Lancer is a long-range strategic bomber used by the United States Air Force. First designed as the Cold War-era replacement for the B-52 Stratofortress, the B-1B was developed primarily as a low-level penetrator with long range, a supersonic speed capability, and weapons payload unmatched by any aircraft in the USAF inventory. Best known to its crews as the Bone, the B-1B is operated by a pilot, a co-pilot, a defensive systems operator, and an offensive systems operator. A low observable or stealth ground attack aircraft formerly operated by the United States Air Force, development of the F-117A began in 1978 with its first flights in 1981. The first production F-117A was delivered in 1982 and the aircraft achieved initial operational capability status in October 1983. Within its unusual angular canopy, the Nighthawk's cockpit has controls similar to any other single-seat fighter of the same generation. These include a head-up display, multifunction displays, and a large black and white screen in the center of the cockpit used to locate the target. The Boeing B-52 is the US Air Force's long-range, subsonic, jet-powered multi-role bomber. Known as the Stratofortress, its sheer size has led crews to call the B-52 the Big Ugly Fat Fellow, or Buff for short. The B-52 is the USAF's principal strategic nuclear and conventional weapons platform. Beginning with the successful contract bid in June 1946, the B-52 entered service in 1961. The B-52 has its peculiarities. When on the ground, the all-metal surface of the aircraft on the forward section of the fuselage has a wrinkled appearance. Only when the crew compartment is pressurized at altitude does the skin expand and become smooth. The B-52 is already the longest-serving combat aircraft in the world, celebrating the 50th anniversary of its first flight in 2002. Due to extensive system and structural upgrades, the B-52's service life is expected to continue until at least 2030. Some say 2040 and beyond, meaning the Buff will be almost 100 years old before its retirement. The F-117A is dynamically unstable, so if the pilot loses control or loses the flight computer, the aircraft will be impossible to fly. Much of this design is to ensure the Nighthawk flies undetected. The platypus tail, for example, is just one of the design features to reduce the F-117's radar and infrared profiles. Another is the exhaust slots, located above the fuselage, to help prevent heat emissions from being detected. The F-117 does not accelerate well, nor does it decelerate well. However, its F-404 engines enable the Nighthawk to cruise at a speed of Mach 0.81. The Air Force retired the last 4 F-117s on the 22nd of April 2008, primarily due to replacement by the more effective F-22 Raptor. The B-1B production version has been operational since 1986, with 92 aircraft delivered. However, in 2001, the US Department of Defense announced plans to reduce the fleet to 60, but this number has increased to 67 following Operation Iraqi Freedom. Already bristling with the latest technology, the B-1B received a $45 million upgrade to its avionics software in 2009. No longer equipped with a nuclear weapons payload, the B-1B now carries a diverse range of bombs, mines and missiles. In many ways, these aircraft are icons of the Cold War era. A classic icon of an earlier war was the Spitfire. It's synonymous with one battle, the Battle of Britain. At the forefront of the Battle of Britain, Biggin Hill was a key World War II fighter base and is now home to the ever-popular annual Biggin Hill Airfair. In the summer of 1940, the RAF flew countless sorties against the German Luftwaffe's fighters and bombers. Along with the Hawker Hurricane, the Spitfire brought victory in the Battle of Britain, and afterwards demonstrated its superb qualities on every major battlefront. As a tribute to those pilots, Biggin Hill Airfair recreates a Spitfire Scramble. This display was particularly special as the 5-ship Scramble tribute involved only Merlin-engine Spitfire variants, with a variety of paint schemes. Designed by R.J. Mitchell, the Spitfire made its maiden flight in March 1936, with production of the Spitfire Mark I commencing in 1937. The Spitfire was produced for 12 years, and when manufacturing ceased in 1948, more than 22,000 Spitfires and Seafires had been built in 40 different variants. Like the Spitfire, with its multitude of variants, her engine, the Merlin, considered one of the finest piston engines ever conceived, was not one engine but many. Possibly the only aircraft engine to have become famous, it was named after Britain's smallest Falcon, the Merlin. All 5 Spitfires on display here were built at the Castle Bromwich Works between 1942 and 1944. Led by the late Ray Hanna in his Spitfire 9 MH434, there were also two Spitfire T9s, Caroline Grace's ML407 and Historic Flying's 161 with the larger rear bubble canopy. Following up is Charlie Brown in the Historic Aircraft Collection Spitfire VB and the Royal Netherlands Air Force Historic Flight Spitfire 9 3W17. Perhaps the most famous of all Spitfires still flying today, MH434 is completely original and has never been fully rebuilt. After 79 operational sorties, MH434 was retired in March 1945. The Grace Spitfire served in the front line of battle throughout the last 12 months of World War II. ML407 is credited with shooting down the first enemy aircraft over the Normandy beachhead on D-Day. The Spitfire was the frontline aircraft defending Britain's skies during the Second World War. Today, the Royal Air Force equivalent is the Panavia Tornado. The Panavia Tornado may have been in frontline service for 25 years, but it's a testament to its capabilities that it remains one of the most successful European military aircraft of the post-war era. A multi-role aircraft which has seen much combat, the Tornado was jointly developed by the United Kingdom, West Germany and Italy. Whilst the Tornado was later adapted for air defence duties as a long-range bomber-destroyer, its primary duty remains low-level supersonic ground attack whilst taking off and landing in short distances. On the drawing board during the Cold War era, it was envisaged that the Tornado IDS would be used to fly fast and low, and in fact, its low-level terrain-following ability remains unmatched. But in the post-Cold War era, the Tornado IDS has needed to adapt to new roles. Now operational in 5 different variants, the Tornado is in service with the German Air Force and Navy, the Italian Air Force, the Royal Air Force, and the Royal Saudi Air Force. The 5 variants have diverse roles. The Tornado GR-1 interdictor strike aircraft is designed for battlefield close air support, counter-air attack, and defense suppression. The aircraft is equipped with an advanced sensor and defensive aid suite for low-level deep penetration missions in all weathers by day and night. The GR-1A is a high-speed, low-level tactical reconnaissance aircraft, providing real-time reconnaissance with facilities for in-flight review of data, post-flight analysis, and instant ground access to recorded imagery, providing 24-hour horizon-to-horizon surveillance coverage. The Tornado GR-1B is the long-range maritime attack aircraft in service with the Royal Air Force. With a long-range capability, the GR-1B can strike at a distance of over 400 miles from base. The F-3 is the long-range air defense variant, which is armed with short-range and medium-range air-to-air missiles. The aircraft has a long-range search capability and can engage targets beyond visual range. As early as May 1984, the UK Ministry of Defence began studies for the first Tornado upgrade project, but it took 9 years for the midlife upgrade project to eventually be launched. The GR-4 is simply a midlife update of the GR-1. The upgrade, the GR-4, entered frontline service on the 28th of April 1998, making its operational debut during Operation Southern Watch, patrolling a large part of southern Iraq. 142 RAF GR-1s have been upgraded to the Tornado GR-4 configuration. A solid aircraft with a large uncluttered cockpit, pilots have nicknamed the aircraft the armchair because they liken flying the Tornado to sitting in a big armchair. In general, an aircraft which is designed to fly at high speeds usually has poor low-speed characteristics. To combat this, the Tornado incorporates a variable geometry or swing wing. Wing sweep is controlled by the pilot using a large lever that moves forwards and backwards depending upon where the pilot wants the wings. The pilot can move the wing all the way forward to 25 degrees for optimum low-speed handling, such as during takeoff and landing, to an intermediate setting of 45 degrees, or swept back at the maximum 67 degrees to increase its high-speed, low-level capability by reducing drag. When sweeping, the wings partially slide into the fuselage, reducing the exposed wing area. This not only makes flight much more comfortable for the aircrew, but also makes the aircraft a more stable platform from which to aim and deliver unguided weapons at low level. The British prototype first flew on the 30th of October 1974. 11 years later, the RAF reconnaissance version, the GR-1A, undertook its maiden flight. By 1994, the RAF had received the first GR-1B maritime strike aircraft. RAF Tornado GR-1s were used during the Gulf War in Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. By the time of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003, the RAF was operating the newly upgraded Tornado GR-4s, together with the F-3 interceptors. These operations were conducted under Operation Telic, the British part of the invasion. Tornadoes continue to serve on the front line in Afghanistan. Not all displays are jet-powered. Here's a great display by the UK's premier parachute display team, the RAF Falcons. The display flight, RAF Falcons, perform their unique and colourful aerial display at numerous venues nationwide. Based at RAF Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire, the RAF Falcons consist of physical training instructors and physical education officers, who are selected for parachute jump instructor duties at the #1 parachute training school. Only after completing at least one tour working within the military training flight instructing static line parachuting can volunteers be considered for selection for the Falcons. 2 hours before a display, the team is briefed about the drop zone, wind and weather. They then perform the whole demonstration on the ground from the exit, freefall and canopy control to the landing pattern. This mental rehearsal of the whole display is known as the dirt dive. The RAF Falcons normally jump from a C-130K Hercules, also known as Fat Albert. If the cloud is particularly low, then the team will exit from the side paradors individually. But if the cloud base is high, the team will exit off the ramp as a group or in pairs once given the signal from the aircraft captain. Red on, green on, go. Display parachuting is one of the most difficult types of parachuting and requires hard work, a high level of skill, and most importantly, trust in other team members and their equipment. The RAF Falcons are renowned for their ability to land in confined spaces under immense pressure. This display demonstrates an elite pilot flying the most sophisticated, cutting-edge fighter in the world, the United States Air Force F-22A Raptor. The Raptor Advanced Tactical Fighter entered service with the US Air Force in late 2005 to satisfy the US requirement for a replacement for the F-15, with the emphasis on speed, stealth and altitude. One of the most expensive fighters ever built, the F-22A represents the best that money can buy. It's the ultimate air superiority weapon, the fighter aircraft that fighter pilots dream about. The Raptor incorporates as many stealth technologies as possible without compromising its ability to locate, identify and kill the best enemy fighters for decades to come. The Raptor's best advantage is stealth, because the F-22 pilot is able to track and neutralize any threat before his opponent even detects the presence of the F-22. Speed is not far behind in terms of importance. At almost double the standard fighter speeds, this supersonic jet makes it harder for any adversary to lock on. Altitude is a great benefit too. The Raptor can fly at heights out of range of most anti-aircraft artillery and surface-to-air missiles. In fighters such as the F-15, the pilot needs to process a large amount of information from different sources while still flying the jet and attacking targets. The Raptor, however, has sensor fusion avionics which gather, integrate and display the data from all the onboard systems and other aircraft in a more easily digestible format. This gives the pilot improved situational awareness, enabling him to concentrate on the targets and positioning of his aircraft. The F-22's origins are rooted in the depths of the Cold War. In 1981, the US Air Force was getting very concerned about the advances the Soviets were making in fighter aircraft. The Sukhoi Su-27 Flanker, which was developed in the early 1980s, was a remarkably agile aircraft. The Flanker could outmaneuver virtually any aircraft the West could fly against it. The Flanker had been especially designed to challenge the American Air Force and spurred the US designers on to build the ultimate fighter aircraft. From the mid-1970s, the US Air Force single-seater F-15 had been the primary American air superiority aircraft. In the late 80s, a two-seater ground attack version called the F-15 Strike Eagle was developed. While both aircraft proved themselves well in combat, they're still essentially designs evolving from the jet fighters of the 1960s and fundamentally inferior to the formidable Sukhoi fighter. It took years for America's answer to the Flanker to take to the skies, but when it did, the F-22 proved to be extraordinary. The Lockheed Martin team had built and flown the demonstration prototype aircraft designated YF-22 by 1990, with the first F-22 fighter aircraft unveiled in April 1997. It was given the name Raptor. In September 2002, the US Air Force decided to redesignate the aircraft as FA-22 to reflect its multi-mission capability in ground attack as well as air-to-air roles. This changed again to F-22A when the Raptor achieved initial operating capability in December 2005. The United States Air Force has ordered 183 aircraft, with 122 already delivered. Although a total requirement of 381 aircraft has been identified, a question mark hangs over the funding for more aircraft. The F-22A flying in this display is based at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. Langley was the Raptor's first operational wing and has a fleet of 40 F-22As. The aircraft has some unique features too. The development of movable nozzles on the jet engines gives the F-22 remarkable maneuvering capabilities. The F-22's engines also produce more thrust than any current fighter engine. This engine thrust can also be pointed in various directions, enabling it to almost hover like the RAF Harrier. Called Super Cruise, this engine thrust can be used to allow the F-22 to cruise efficiently at supersonic airspeeds of over Mach 1.5 without using afterburners. This capability greatly expands the F-22's operating envelope in terms of both speed and range. Nearly 40% of the F-22 is comprised of titanium, which is used for its high strength-to-weight ratio in critical stress areas and also for its heat-resistant qualities. The balance of the aircraft is comprised of carbon fiber composites, aluminium and thermoplastic materials. The composites have been used for a diverse range of items, including the fuselage frame, the doors, intermediate spars on the wings, and the honeycomb sandwich construction skin panels. The F-15 fuselage, by comparison, is all metal, and so the aircraft cannot match the speed and maneuverability of the F-22A. In many ways, the F-22 is a simpler design than older jets, making it easier to maintain and fly. At least 3 different experimental camouflage patterns were trialled during testing. Although the composition is classified, the operational Raptors appear to have a metallic finish which, when viewed from certain angles, suggests the presence of an additive to help absorb radar waves from hostile radars. Pilots are delighted with the F-22A's cockpit, which they describe as roomy. They also like their seats, which are designed to alleviate stress on the body. The cockpit is fitted with a hands-on throttle and stick control and has an all-glass cockpit with a head-up display and 6 color liquid crystal displays showing all information. After turning the jet on and starting the auxiliary power unit, which is a small turbine engine, the pilot pushes the throttles over the cutoff, and from there, the start sequence is automatic. Even the checklists are electronic. Following a flight control system check, closing the weapons bay doors, and loading the mission data, the pilot is then ready for takeoff, with little more to do in terms of flying the Raptor. The F-22, along with the F-35 ground attack aircraft, may well turn out to be America's last traditional fighter aircraft. No doubt they'll serve well into the 21st century, but rapid advancements in computer technology are providing armed, unmanned aircraft with greatly enhanced capabilities. These may well be the way of the future. A stablemate from Lockheed, but worlds apart, is the workhorse of the Air Force, the C-130 Hercules. The Lockheed Martin C-130J Super Hercules is an American 4-engine turboprop military transport aircraft. The C-130J is a comprehensive upgrade of the Lockheed C-130 Hercules, with new engines, flight deck, and other systems. The Hercules family has the longest continuous production run of any military aircraft in history. During more than 50 years of service, the Hercules has participated in military, civilian and humanitarian aid operations and outlived several planned successors. The C-130J is the newest version of the Hercules and the only model still in production. Extremely similar to the classic Hercules in general appearance, the J model is a very different aircraft. These differences include new Rolls-Royce turboprops, digital avionics including head-up displays for each pilot, and reduced crew requirements. Nowadays just the 2 pilots, 1 loadmaster and 1 crew chief. No navigator or flight engineer. The aircraft can also be configured with the enhanced cargo handling system. The system consists of a computerized loadmaster station, from where the user can remotely control the underfloor winch and also configure the flip floor system to palletized roller or flat floor cargo handling. Initially developed for the USAF, this system enables rapid roll changes to be carried out. Overall, these changes have dramatically improved performance over previous versions. The largest operator of the new model will be the United States Air Force, but the US Marines, the US Coast Guard, the Royal Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force, the Danish Air Force, the Royal Norwegian Air Force and the Italian Air Force are also operating the C-130J. The Super Hercules' performance figures are impressive. With a top speed of 417 miles per hour, the C-130J has a range of 3,262 miles. It can carry 92 passengers, 64 airborne troops, or 74 patients with 2 medical aids. The JAS-39 Gripen is the multi-role and swing-role fighter aircraft manufactured by the Swedish aerospace company Saab. Using the latest technology, the Gripen is capable of performing an extensive range of air-to-air, air-to-surface and reconnaissance missions. The aircraft is put through thorough pre-flight checks by a specialist airshow maintenance crew in readiness to loan their aircraft to the pilot for a while. Leading test pilot at airshow display ace Fredrik Mukkala prepares for his display. Prior to any display, both the pilot and the aircraft take time to prepare. Fredrik spends time alone getting into a focused frame of mind. Some pilots read, whilst others play computer games. Gripen's premier display pilot since 1998, Fredrik, like any display pilot, goes through his display in minute detail one last time, physically and mentally rehearsing the rolls, turns and pull-ups. Having clocked up nearly 4,000 flying hours, with 1,000 of those in the Gripen, flying is second nature to Frederick. Like all pilots, he must personally check the aircraft for any noticeable problems before signing and taking command of his Gripen. Usually at this point, mission data is then loaded into the aircraft's central computer using a portable data transfer unit, or black box. He goes through his pre-flight checks before starting up. Frederick is strapped into the inclined Mach 10100 ejection seat with the aid of a 5-point harness and leg restraints. The Gripen air display comprises of two basic routines, a clear weather and a low altitude option. Which one is flown on a particular day depends upon the weather. The basic rule is that if the crowd can see the Gripen, a display is possible. The good weather display requires a cloud base of 3,000 feet or more and visibility of at least 3 kilometers. The low altitude option can be used when the cloud base is as low as 600 feet. Although each routine is a standalone display, when time and circumstances permit, elements of both can be combined into a single breathtaking performance. With unrivaled short takeoff and landing capabilities, the takeoff is quite spectacular. With afterburner on, the Gripen uses less than 1,500 feet of the runway. On takeoff, Frederick turns between 45 to 60 degrees away from the display line. The Gripen was designed for performance, flexibility, effectiveness and survivability in air combat. The designation JAS stands for Jagd, air-to-air, Attack, air-to-surface, and Spanning, reconnaissance, indicating that the Gripen is a multi-role or swing-role fighter aircraft that can fulfill each mission type. The JAS-39 got its name Gripen, or Griffin, through a public competition in 1982. The Griffin is in Saab's logo and is the symbolic animal of the area in which Saab AB is headquartered. The first Gripen was rolled out in 1987, with the first prototype flying on the 9th of December 1988. The latest Gripen, the NG, will be powered by the General Electric Volvo Aero F414G engine, a development of the FA-18EF Super Hornets engine. The engine will produce 20% more thrust, enabling a super cruise speed of Mach 1.1 with air-to-air missiles. In designing the aircraft, several layouts were studied. Saab ultimately selected an unstable canard design. The canard configuration gives a high onset of pitch rate and low drag, enabling the aircraft to be faster, have longer range and carry a larger payload. The Gripen is also extremely maneuverable thanks to its fully digital flight control system. The cockpit provides a display area some 30% larger than other fighters. With 3 full-color head-down displays and a wide-angle head-up display, the Gripen's cockpit is entirely digital. There are no analog backup instruments, although the aircraft does have digital emergency instrument presentation, which is unique to the aircraft. Information is prioritized according to the situation, so that the pilot is not overwhelmed by non-vital data. The HUD presents essential flight data and weapons aiming information. An optional further source is the pilot's Cobra head-mounted display, which presents real-time information in the line of sight. This can be useful for weapons queuing. The pilot flies the aircraft by means of a center stick with switches for operating the weapon systems. The left-hand throttle operates as an additional joystick, providing the pilot with 14 different functions. According to the swing-roll principle, the pilot has the flexibility to switch from one mission type to another very simply. Even at 125 knots, Frederick uses less than 1,500 feet of runway, stopping using only his wheel brakes. The combination of delta wing and canards gives the Gripen significantly better takeoff and landing performance and flying characteristics. The aircraft's stopping distance was reduced by extending the relatively large air brakes and using the control surfaces to push the aircraft down, enabling the wheel brakes to apply more force and tilting the canards downwards, making them into large air brakes. The Swedish Air Force specified a need to operate from 800-meter runways. Early in the development program, all flights from Saab's facility were flown from within a 9-meter by 800-meter outline painted on the runway. Another requirement by the Swedish Air Force for the Gripen was the ability to land on public roads near military stores for quick maintenance. The Gripen fighter can be refueled and rearmed in 10 minutes by a 5-man mobile ground crew operating out of a truck. More than 200 Gripens are in service around the world with the Swedish, Czech, Hungarian, South African and Thai Air Forces. The British-based Empire Test Pilots School is operating the Gripen as its advanced fast jet platform for test pilots worldwide. Of all the airshow pilots, the late Ray Hanna is perhaps the most famous. Ray split the airshow community. Some felt he threw his aircraft around and should have been more cautious with such precious aircraft. Others believed Ray flew his Spitfire as RAF pilots would have done in combat during World War II. Either way, the huge talent of this unassuming man shone through. At the close of every Biggin Hill airshow, Ray would fly his Spitfire as a mark of respect to the Battle of Britain pilots. This is Ray Hanna's last ever tribute at Biggin. A New Zealander born in 1928, Raynham George Hanna worked his passage to the UK solely to join the RAF in 1949. An outstanding and experienced fighter pilot, Ray Hanna was an RAF squadron leader and leader of the Red Arrows during the 1960s. In fact, he created the Red signature diamond maneuver. Shortly before leaving the RAF, Ray had been approached by Sir Adrian Swire, who'd recently purchased a Spitfire 9. Swire invited him to fly and display the aircraft at a time when there were few Spitfires flying. This proved to be the beginning of a unique relationship between Hanna and MH434, the aircraft's serial number. For Ray, the Spitfire was the epitome of fighter aircraft. It could fly to a maximum speed of 370 miles an hour and as high as 35,000 feet. Not only was the Spitfire fast, but as you can see, extremely maneuverable. In many ways, it was similar to its main adversary, the ME-109. In 1981, Ray founded the Old Flying Machine Company, specializing in the restoration and operation of classic warbirds. From the beginning, the company specialized in film and television work and has an impressive list of credits to its name, including Piece of Cake, Memphis Belle, Saving Private Ryan, James Bond Tomorrow Never Dies, and Empire of the Sun. Ray Hanna died on the 1st of December 2005. From one of the Second World War's fastest aircraft, this next display is by one of the slowest, the unusual Luftwaffe's Fieseler Stork. An incredible looking aircraft. It's sometimes hard to remember that this is a popular Luftwaffe aircraft in the Second World War. The Fieseler Fi-156 Stalker was built by Fieseler in Germany before and during World War II, and production continued in other countries into the 1950s for the private market. In 1935, the RLM Reiche Aviation Ministry put out a tender for a new Luftwaffe aircraft suitable for liaison, which is today called forward air control, and also for medical evacuation. Designed by Chief Designer Reinhold Muse and Technical Director Erich Barken, the Fieseler specifications were advanced in terms of short takeoff and landing performance. In a design feature that was rare for land-based aircraft, the wings on the Stork could be folded back along the fuselage. Another valued Stork characteristic was the aircraft's ability to fly at low speeds, which suited it perfectly to reconnaissance work, and given the right weather conditions, the Stork could almost hover. Found on every front throughout the European and North African theatres of operation in World War II, at least 60 Storchs were captured by the Allies. One even became the personal aircraft of Field Marshal Montgomery. The Nazis' Field Marshal Rommel also used a Storch for his personal transport. A Stork was the victim of the last dogfight on the Western Front, downed by a direct Allied counterpart of the Stork, the L-4 Grasshopper. The Stork is the only aircraft in the Second World War known to have been downed by handgun fire. The pilot and co-pilot of an L-4 opened fire on a Stork with their .45 caliber pistols, forcing the German aircrew to land and surrender. The Stork became renowned for its excellent short takeoff and landing capabilities. The long spindly legs of the undercarriage contain oil and spring shock absorbers that compress about 18 inches on landing, allowing the aircraft to set down almost anywhere. In flight, the landing gear hangs down, giving the aircraft the appearance of a Stork. On the 26th of April 1945, a Stork was one of the last aircraft to land on the improvised airstrip in the Tiergarten near the Brandenburg Gate during the Battle of Berlin. It was flown by the test pilot Hannah Reich, who flew her lover, Field Marshal Robert Ritter von Greim, from Munich to Berlin, when Hitler informed him that he was to take over command of the Luftwaffe from Hermann Göring. But perhaps the most famous use of a Stork was the rescue of the deposed Italian dictator Benito Mussolini from a boulder-strewn mountaintop surrounded by Italian troops. German commando Otto Skorzeny dropped with 90 paratroopers onto the peak and quickly captured it. But following a rescue attempt with an aircraft that broke down en route, pilot Walter Gerlach flew in a Stork, landed, took aboard Mussolini and Skorzeny, and successfully took off again, even though the aircraft was overloaded. The Stork, displaying here GBPHZ, was constructed in France in 1942 and was originally fitted with an Argus inverted V8 engine. After the war, this Storch served with the French Armée de l'Air as MS-500 Criquet. The Storch was retired for military use, re-engined with a Jacobs radial, redesignated as MS-505 Criquet, and put to use towing gliders. Having arrived in the UK in 1988, the Storch was acquired by the Historic Aircraft Collection in 2002. The HAC are restoring the aircraft and converting it back to its original MS-500 designation. An original Argus V8 engine has been acquired, together with its propeller and some of its accessories. The Historic Aircraft Company usually display the Storch with an L4 Grasshopper, the Storch's former sparring partner, but here we've been treated to a solo display. This Faisler Storch is on permanent display in Hangar 4 at the Imperial War Museum, Duxford.